So yeah, the first class is really just going to be talking about doing the math when it comes to analyzing properties. I know, Ton, you're out there in Seattle, so we're going to pick Tacoma because, right, we were talking about how that's close enough and you can almost cash flow in those areas. So that's
Yeah,
kind of like the first pick I was going to go for.
absolutely
So
easier.
yeah. So in terms of the risks, this is a pretty common question. I figured this is a good intro question. And then after that, we're going to talk about how to calculate your returns. Because one of the most common questions I get from people is, am I buying the property at the correct price or am I being overpriced, right?
Right.
So first things first is cash flow is king. That's a pretty common statement in real estate, mainly because rent almost never goes down. Like,
Very true.
unless you're in San Francisco and coronavirus, pretty much even during the Great Recession, and on average, as like the whole country goes, rent moved sideways through 2008 and 2009. So essentially, if you can cash flow, you can keep the property forever, even if you lose your job, which is kind of, the basics when it comes to real estate investing. That's why there's like so much stability around it, and why prices just don't drop halfway overnight compared to like stocks, right? So even for a city like Detroit in 08, 09, even though they went bankrupt, the rent pretty much stayed flat, right? So if you can be Detroit and stay, financially solvent as a landlord, like, and based on that cash flow, that means you can pretty much do it anywhere in the country. So as long as the cash flows. And then finally, the price is already starting to come back, as you might have been paying attention, but prices are up 13% year over year. It's higher than that for Seattle. I don't know if you checked it, but
I heard
um,
San Francisco, Seattle is like ranked 2 next to the Bay Area.
yep, yep. So then for foreclosures will probably drop at most like 5% based on like Zillow and Redfin forecasts. So long story short is, if you can buy it now at a discount of 5-10%, you're going to be good for, the average hit to most cities. So and then the last thing is, everyone's worried, like, will a recession affect it? Not necessarily, mainly because 2008, 2009 was kind of a fluke event where the recession was caused by the housing market. Pretty much all the other recessions, housing prices have either gone up or pretty much stayed stable. So, all right. So I'm going to talk about calculating your returns. There's a calculated here at connectrecap.com/resources. I've got it pulled up right next to myself right here. So this is sort of the calculator you can use. I've added notes to help it be more easy to understand. So first things first, though, is, again, cash flow, more important. And then in expensive markets where it's almost impossible cash flow, the closer you get, the better you have. At least that way, the rent can help you maintain the property in case of any downturns.
Right.
Cool. So in terms of sold comps, that's going to be one of the first things to talk about. Comps, short for comparables. It's how you estimate what prices are worth for a property. You want to look at all the sales for similar properties in the last 6 months, right? And you're going to want the similar number of square footage, lot size, number of bedrooms, bath. Personally, I use Redfin. A lot of people use Zillow, but I think Zillow is a lot slower. And Redfin will track things like, oh, it's already listed as pending, right? Somebody already bought the home under contract, and Zillow doesn't usually always keep track of that on time. So hypothetically, let's say I'm going to pick a random home here, and this is what, 250, cozy, 2-bed, 1-bath. So this one's what? Actually, no, you were talking about multifamily, right? So
Either one's fine.
let's
Each
okay.
one has their own numbers.
Right. So I'll just pick multifamily and see what comes up. All right. So we got a few here, but essentially this one's like 480 for this
I know
one.
single family more people can relate because it's easier to get into.
That's true. We can look at that then. Single family home. More people can get into it for sure. All right. So say there's this house that's 3 beds and it's for $1,600, right? Or 1,600 square feet. Let's see, this is what, 300,000. So we're just gonna plug these numbers in. So worst case scenario, you pay the actual price, right? And then unless it's a hot market, then you can sometimes go over listing, but ideally you can get it at a discount, right? So we're gonna say we can like knock off like 10 grand, 3% off. I don't think that's unreasonable. And since it's an investment property, you'll likely be seeing interest rates around like 3.2%. But if
Right.
you're lucky, maybe you'll get 3.1. That just based on myself. I'm buying a property right now in Austin as an investment. They gave me like 3.5%. So,
Okay.
and then down payment, we'll say 25, right? Usually it's like 2.8 right now if you're in the primary, and you can go even lower with the down payment, but we're gonna assume that you're investing in the property. So rehab costs, it's usually around 10,000 if it's just like a cosmetic fix, right? For something that's 1,600 square foot, you might go a little higher, but that's kind of my basis in Chicago. 10,000 will get you most of the way there in terms of paint. Any issues that are like small, but if you have to go behind the walls and like tear stuff out, or even like replace a lot of new appliances, then you can probably go past 10,000. But usually like lipstick on the pig sort of fixes where you're taking off like some of the popcorn ceiling and repainting,
Yeah.
those will 10,000 will more than enough cover for that. And then closing costs, it depends on where you're at, but like for me, it's usually around 2 to 5%. In Chicago, it's like 3. So this will include all your costs that you have to pay for as the buyer. As a seller, you pay the commission, but as a buyer, you still have to essentially pay for inspections and like do the title transfer fees, and you cover a portion of your own costs. So in terms of rental income, now you have to look at rental comps. So under rental comps, you got to look for properties that are nearby and what they're worth. So one thing I use sometimes is Rentometer. That's like the fastest way. So I'm just gonna pop over there and look at this address.
Just a bit.
Huh?
Zillow has a rent estimate also on there when you look at the properties.
Oh, that's true. I kind of like Rentometer better because I'll show you why. The Zillow estimate can sometimes be pretty far off since they don't have that many people who actually list apartments near where they live. But so 3-bed, and then I'm just gonna analyze. Okay, so I like it because you can look at the average and then within the percentiles, right?
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Usually I go a little lower, right? I try to pick 25th percentile if I'm being conservative, but like, or just like between like 25th and average. And I can look at the map and I see this is the address here. Red means it went higher, but most of them are blue.
Oh, wow.
I could see there's green on the top left, which means those apartments that are cheaper are probably like a worse area. But you know, just south of that, there's like a range of more expensive apartments where I'm picking this one. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I used to just go on Craigslist and compare different rents that are similar.
Yeah, yeah, Craig. Yeah, so that's one way to go about it. So for this one, the median is higher than the average, right? So that means more of the properties near this one are going to be like it slants in the right. So the distribution isn't super equivalent.
Yeah.
It's more like a statistics thing. But hey, welcome, Sean. Welcome to the group. We're just chatting about this property that he's buying in Tacoma, maybe. So long story short is, let's say it's like 1,600 is on the low side for this one, but it's higher than 25th, so it's not crazy. And so I'm gonna come here and, oh, yeah, I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna select, oops, the calculator. I'm gonna say I get about 1,600 a month, right? In my worst case scenario. And then the average case, it was like 1,680, right? And then best case, maybe we even get like, you know, 1,780. That's like, we're crushing it on that. So I don't know if there's laundry there, but some people do coin. If you're doing a single family, it might not be worth it to do coin, and it might just be better to install in-unit washer dryer and then raise the rents accordingly. I know out here in Chicago, you can get an extra $100 a month if you put an in-unit washer dryer. So, and then the mortgage, I put in like an algorithm there, it automatically calculates it for you. So you're paying like $900 or whatever a month to own the property. And then PMI you'll get if you don't put more than 25% for your down payment. So,
I thought it was
huh?
I thought it was 20%.
I thought so too. It changed to 25 recently.
Oh
So
wow. Okay,
yeah, my lender told me it's like I'll pay PMI if I go less than 25. So
wow. Okay
yeah,
then.
it might be a COVID thing. And then now we're gonna look up the taxes. That's why having one of these is nice because you can just sort of jump down, Control F, straight down to taxes, and it'll say $312 for the tax, right? And insurance is $55 a month. So in the taxes, it was what did I use? 312, and then you can look at home insurance, which is 55. And then liability insurance, I would prefer that over having an LLC, mainly because LLC is going to be like a few hundred in filing fees, and then you have to pay a CPA to like take care of some of that every year. Whereas like liability insurance will kind of do the same thing for you, and it costs me like $30 a month, like I said. So I personally think the liability is worth it. And then vacancies, usually it's 5 to 10% depending on your neighborhood. I don't know the area that well, but I'm just gonna call it and say like 8%, since I know Tacoma's not like close enough to the major downtown area. And I don't know what the rental market is there. If there's a lot of students and there's a lot of young people there, there's a good chance you'll rent it out very quickly. But normally 0.05% like vacancy is the average for most cities at the moment. Usually, if you have no idea completely, I would just look up, right, Seattle average vacancy rate. And then, right now it's 4.42%. So I might be totally way off and like overestimating.
I always
So
just 10% to be safe.
yeah, 8% to be safe. So then repairs, it depends on the condition of the house, right? I say 5 to 10%. And then capital expenditure is those big expenses that you want to save money for as a rainy day fund. Kind of like if a roof collapses or whatever, that's under capital expenditure. That wouldn't be under repairs. Appliances also fall under capital expenditures. Normally, I would say you want to put away around 2,000 a year, just in case for like all the expenses that you would have for CapEx, and like the repairs, they'll happen when they happen. But essentially 124 times like, what is this? 12 is equal to, yeah, it's 1,500. I think 1,500 is a little on the low side, but that should be enough to like cover some of these capital expenditures, just in case anything too wrong happens. And then for the property manager, if you're doing it yourself, you can go to 0. Would you be doing it yourself, or would you be hiring somebody 10?
I usually let a property manager run it for the first year so I could learn from them, and then just take it over afterwards.
Okay, makes sense. So then do you know what the rates are down there?
I haven't looked into it yet. I just
Okay.
moved months ago, so.
Again, congrats. Yeah. So rule of thumb is usually single family homes is 10%. But like right now, for example, I'm trying to pick up like a 40 unit and I'm going down to like 6%, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
like that, it keeps scaling down,
I have a single
the bigger
family
the size.
in Central Cali, and they're a friend of the family, so they gave me 8%.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, I heard 10% is the norm.
Yeah. So water. Do you know your expenses for the water bill? Like what you're spending right now?
Water is expensive here.
You're
I
just
think
right on the ocean. How's it
it
expensive?
is a good number, but electricity is like super cheap.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I thought it rained all the time in Washington. Why is this so expensive?
I don't know. I'm not sure why. Water is
All
more
right.
expensive. It's Yeah, it's weird.
All right. So what's your normal water bill then?
I actually don't know off the top of my head.
No worries.
It's
Let's
on off.
do some Google foo.
Average water bill Seattle. $63.
63.
Tacoma's 41.
Ooh, that's pretty nice. Yeah,
It's a lot lower than Seattle.
that's a little perk there. Okay, so let's say it's $41. Oops. And then electricity is what?
Let me see.
How much is electricity? Ooh.
Average electricity bill. $88 a month.
88. Okay.
That's what- Yeah.
Okay. And then so usually I pay for snow removal because like if it's a multifamily, huh?
It doesn't snow that much here. I know in Chicago and everywhere else.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but it's gonna be like 50 a month for me. But if you have a single family home, usually they take care of that themselves, right? So
Yeah.
don't worry about that. Lawn maintenance, you can either do it or you can charge them to do it. Um, I'm I'm guessing in Tacoma, there's also not that much of lawn because it's like cold up there.
Right.
But it cost me about like 20 to 40 bucks depending on who I hire every time I cut it, and it's like twice a week. So like that's how I budget it. But long story short is this is the property and here are the returns. You're going to get about a negative $200 cash flow, and the monthly cash, it can go up to about 470 in the worst case scenario, right? So
Right.
in terms of a net operating income, this matters more when it comes to apartment complexes, but it gives you an idea of how you can compare to other people. Net operating income is the income you generate before any mortgage expenses. So the idea being that if you manage the property properly, just like you do with everyone else, then this is how you can compare properties to each other, because everyone's ability to get the mortgage will change, and that's what makes the factors different. However, everyone will be able to target the same NOI, assuming they manage it properly, right?
Mhm.
So that's what net operating income is for, and it usually matters more when it comes to large apartment complex multifamily, because that's how they value the property. So then once that's done, you have some reserves, right? I'd recommend you put about 6 months away just in case for anything that happens. And then cash on cash wise, you're like negative.
The cap rate is really low.
Yeah. So here's what I'd recommend though. Once you realize, okay, this isn't the ideal scenario for me, then you have to adjust it to a price that makes sense for you, right? So you want a non-negative number, right? Okay, so now let's keep dropping it and say this is now instead of 300, let's drop this 290, and then let's drop this to 270. And let's drop this to like 260. Okay, so now that I've readjusted these numbers, okay, monthly cash flow is still a little bit painful, but maybe you're okay with like the first year, you pay you pay like the property manager, but then the year afterwards you deal with it yourself. So at that point, you're paying out like, either 100, somewhere between like 30, you're getting paid $30 or losing $300 a month. So at that point, you can keep adjusting the numbers and figure out a price that works for you. For this one, maybe you can go all the way down to like 250,000 or something. Yeah, the lower you go, basically, the lower your monthly payments, and eventually you'll get to a point where it's like, all right, I can justify the cost of purchasing and doing the rehab on this project because
After a while, you know these numbers in your head, and you can just analyze the property when you look at listings.
exactly. And then right now, for example, this project is obviously priced too high to be a rental. It might be good for somebody who's trying to buy the home for themselves
House
and not
hack.
think about that, right? But that's not what you are. You're an investor, right? Think numbers first.
Yep.
So yeah, and in particular, let me see. Redfin last checked in. Yeah, so this has been on market for like 12 days. So they haven't received any offers yet, so you never know. But personally, I like actually looking at overpriced projects like this and then waiting until they get past the 30-day point and then trying to bid a low offer. That way, they're more willing to accept because they're like, oh, we've been on market for like a month.
Yeah, I've noticed too. Properties are overpriced and then they've been sitting on market for a long time. There's a few of
Exactly.
them in Seattle too, even though houses sell in 2 weeks here, there's some that have been for months because they're overpriced.
Yeah. And then because they overpriced at the beginning, they now have to make concessions and keep going down in order to adjust, their
Yeah.
expectations and match
Money
other
every
people.
month, the longer they wait.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And it gets stale on the market, all these other perks. So long story short, estimate your sold comps, estimate your rental comps, expenses. You're going to want to ask your property manager, Google. My favorite way to do it, I don't know if it's unethical, you call a landlord and you pretend to be an interested tenant. You're like, hey, I want to live in your apartment complex. How much does it usually cost a month? Like that's, yeah, and they'll be very interested in giving you that information for free. And then if you're doing a multifamily, you want to make sure those utilities are separately metered. That way you can charge tenants back. And then taxes you can just kind of Google for.
Yeah.
And then repair, CapEx, vacancy. These are things that most people who are investors don't actually put into their budget. So this is something you want to like really pay attention to because this is how you can lose $200-300 a month more than you originally expected. So but yeah, 5-10% depends on your age and condition, and condos will have lower CapEx, mainly because when you have like a shared roof as like a townhome, usually there's your HOA bill that goes towards doing that maintenance. So
Yep.
you can save. Yeah.
I know some people save, some people don't like it. I avoid.
Yeah, there's other issues with HOAs, but one thing that's good about it is you lower your CapEx expenditures. And then vacancy wise, you just want to Google the average market vacancy and it's going to be higher in bad neighborhoods. So that's kind of it. But yeah, any other questions? I think that's kind of it.
No, that's basically sort of the same way I go about looking at deals. But this is more structured and it's faster way to look at it versus redoing the math every time and but yeah.
Yeah, so I got a link for the calculator. You're more than welcome to use it whenever you want. Just make a copy for yourself so that way you can save the calculator for people to use in the future. And then the other thing too is one methodology people don't talk about that much is renting out by the room. When you rent out by the individual room, you can get about 20% more on per room cost divided by.
That works out.
Yeah. So the way it's supposed to work is you take an average 2-bedroom in that area, divide it by 2, add 20%, and that's the room rent.
Value. Okay.
Yeah. So this can work out well in areas with young people and places where there's like
universities. Yeah. A lot of foot
universities. Traffic. Yeah. And I would look up the demographic information. There are sites that tell you the percentage of renters in the area. Higher the percentage, you're much more likely to get more people to fill out those spots. So once you fill those out, you can actually recalculate your rent. You're going to want to give a little bit more buffer to make sure you're cash flowing, mainly because you're going to have higher property management fees.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Cool. Well, aside from that, anyone else have questions in the chat? I see you, Bill Yang. Welcome to the group. We just finished, unfortunately.
Oh, cool. I got to run, but this is great.
Yeah, again, thank you again. Really appreciate it. Well, have a good rest of your holiday.
Thank you. Happy holidays, guys.
Happy holidays.